rummage sale so that I could keep my tea on.
Then, the boy walked the Torah through the women, but not everybody was wearing a towel. It was in the afternoon, so I asked the bar mitzvah's father why I thought the men had to wear a towel. This is Chabad. When the Torah's out, he said, well, we didn't read the whole Torah portion. So I said, well, tell me, what is Chabad? He said, we welcome everybody, so you do what you want. I'll have to look at that. We don't have to
Sandy, do you need any chores done? You all right?
I don't think so. I think we're good. I'm just looking up the page for Haftarah. 326.
Yeah,
Beautiful service last night, wasn't it?
I watched it.
We left early because Al was tired, but then we watched it on,
Zoom? Or, no,
yeah, whatever,
Facebook.
Facebook. Oh, so the Torah counts, Sandy?
Torah's count. There's a midrash, there's a teaching that if you have 9 people and a Torah, the Torah counts as a person, and so you have many.
Interesting.
Yeah, Rabbi David always said that to us on Saturdays.
Yeah, Rabbi Memes Fuller, same thing. So just to double check, do we do our discussion about the portion before the Haftarah, or do we do Torah discussion and then Haftarah? Does anybody remember what the order is?
What was your question?
On Saturdays, I wasn't sure if we do our discussion before the Haftarah reading.
After the Haftarah,
Thank
yeah,
you.
we get all the other that stuff out of the way.
We get all that happened.
All that out of the rye out of the way.
I went to a different source this time. I always use my Jewish learning, but this time I did not use my Jewish learning. I went to Rabbi Sachs, who's the head of the Reform movement in England, and I love his stuff. I think before we start, we're gonna get started.
Yeah.
Last week, Central Synagogue did a deal.
Oh, New York Central.
Yeah. And I'll tell you who else, Rabbi Sussman was here yesterday. I took a class with him at the Jewish Museum. He is unbelievable. He is a KI.
Yeah, I know. Sussman married me.
Okay, well,
My first.
he just published a book on all his sermons. He said it's on Amazon. He's brilliant because he has a PhD in history.
Yes. He's an amazing rabbi.
Well, he's retired.
Yes, well, that's why David.
So we are going to get started with our service today, and my apologies to those who are joining us through the miracle of technology, and I'm not on, so I'm going to go turn it on. The mic's in the back probably, Dr.
Brilliant man. He is a brilliant man.
Yes, he is.
I didn't know.
He's followed by a very great man.
I didn't,
Yeah.
I didn't,
Rabbi David is
I didn't think he could sell.
He's done it well.
Different,
Different.
he said he was going to sell it.
different personality.
Yeah.
Oh, different.
Totally.
Sandy, did you find the page for Noah?
I did.
Is it on there?
So now I will say my apologies to those who are joining us online for starting a few minutes late, but I'm grateful that we can be together, and let's all just take a moment and take a breath. This has been a hard week for many of us. For those of you who were here last night, it was also a very joyful beginning to our Shabbat with our installation of Rabbi Memes Fuller. So she's taking a much needed rest and enjoying some of her friends and family who've come into town, and we wish them all a lovely Shabbat. And we'll take one more breath. And for those who are wearing talitot, I invite you to join me in the blessing. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kishanu b'mizvotav, v'tzivanu lehitatef b'tzitzit. And just a thought for those who wear talitot and who've been wearing them for so many years that we know the blessing already. Sometimes looking at the blessing, if you have it on the atara on your talis, is a wonderful way to help center and prepare you for your prayers, because it's a visual centering as well as an emotional and internal centering. Doesn't have the first line, but it has the second line. Interesting. Okay, so we will join together in Modeh or Moda'ani, and we're looking at page 186 in the brackets, in the blue numbers, page 186, Modeh or Moda'ani. Moda'ani lifanecha, melech chai v'kayam, shehechezarta b'nishmati b'chemla, b'chemla, Rabbi emunatecha, Rabbi emunatecha. And we'll continue on page 192, page 192, with the singing of Matovu. Matovu alecha Yaakov, alecha Yaakov, mishkenotecha Yisrael. Matovu alecha Yaakov, alecha Yaakov, mishkenotecha Yisrael. Vani mirov chastika avovetecha, eshtachave elechol kodshika b'yiratecha. Matovu alecha Yaakov, alecha Yaakov, mishkenotecha Yisrael. Matovu alecha Yaakov, alecha Yaakov, mishkenotecha Yisrael. Adonai avdi me'on beitecha, u'mikom mishkan kevodecha. V'ani eshtakaveh v'ekra, evrecha lifnei Adonai osi. Matovu alecha Yaakov, alecha Yaakov, mishkenotecha Yisrael. Matovu alecha Yaakov, alecha Yaakov, mishkenotecha Yisrael. And we read together in a time that life is becoming so challenging for so many. With those in need in our hearts, we read on the opposite page on 193. May the one whose spirit is with us in every righteous deed be with all who work for the good of humanity and bear the burdens of others, and who give bread to the hungry, who clothe the naked, and take the friendless into their homes. May the work of their hands endure, and may the seed they sow bring abundant harvest. We continue with Elohai Neshama on page 196, 196. We continue with the chant as a chance to again get ourselves calm and centered and ready to daven. Elohai Neshama shenatata bi teorai, Elohai Neshama shenatata bi teorai, Elohai Neshama שנתת בי טהוראי. אלוהי נשמה שנתת בי טהוראי. On page 199 at the bottom, religion embraces both faith and action. The primary quality is action, for it lays the foundation for faith. The more we do good, the more readily do we grasp the meaning of duty and life, and the more readily do we believe in the divine, from which stems the good. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lasechli bina leavkin ben yom uvein laila. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, pokeach ivrim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, matir asurim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, zokev kefufim. Page 200. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, rokach haaretz al hamayim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamechin mitzadei kaver. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, malbish arumim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hanotein layav koach. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hama'avir sheina me'einai utnuma me'afapai. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, shesani b'selem Elohim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, shesani bat chorin. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, shesani Israel. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, ozer Israel bikura. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, oter Israel betifara. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. And I will prepare the microphone to go around for those who wish to read as we go on through the service. I invite you to use the microphone, not here where it won't work, but here where it will. So if you ever wonder why it doesn't seem to work, it's because it needs to be in front of you. So we continue with the reading on page 206. Ivan, did you want to? Thank you.
These are things that are limitless, of which a person enjoys the fruit of the world, while the principle remains in the world to come. They are honoring one's father and mother, engaging in deeds of compassion, arriving early for study, morning and evening, dealing graciously with guests, visiting the sick, providing for the wedding couple, accompanying the dead for burial, being devoted to prayer, and making peace among people. But the study of Torah encompasses them all.
Thank you. We continue on page 224, page 224 with Chatzi Kaddish. I invite those of you who are able to do so to rise. Page 224. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabba, ve'alma divra kirute ve'yamlik malchute, ve'chayekon u'v'yomekon, u'v'chayei d'kol beit Yisrael, bagala, bagala, u'v'zman kariv ve'beru, amen. Yehesh me Rabba mevarach, le'alam ul'al me'al Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitbar v'yitamam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekudesha Leila min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata damiran b'alma v'yimeru Amen. Baruchu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach leolam va'ed. And we turn to our next reading, which is at the bottom of page 231, Love Your Neighbor.
Love your neighbor as yourself, you said. In light blinded we saw that inner and outer worlds are one. As you are one, you spoke and we wrote. We reached for you down the centuries, your light moving before us as we climbed, fell back and climbed again, your Sinai of life.
Baruch atah Adonai, habocher be'amo Yisrael be'ahava. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai echad. Baruch Shem, kevod malchuto, leolam va'ed. I invite you to be seated. We continue on page 234, page 234, with Ve'ahavta. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavecha uv'chol nafshecha uv'chol me'odecha v'hayu hadivarim ha'ele Asher Anochi Mesavecha Hayom Al Levavecha Veshinantam Levanecha V'dibarta Bam Veshivtecha Bevetecha Uvlechtecha Vaderech Uvshochbecha Uvkumecha Ukshartam leod al yadecha v'hayu letotavot beinenecha uktavtam al mezuzot beitecha uvisharecha leman tizkeru v'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'yitem kedoshim Le'Elohechem, Ani Adonai Elohechem, Asher hoseiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim, liot lachem le'Elohim, Ani Adonai Elohechem. We continue with the reading on the bottom of page 237, Life Without Integrity, with our next reader.
Life without integrity is like loosely hanging threads, easily fraying from the main cloth, while in acts of piety we learn to understand that every instant is like a thread, raveling out of eternity to form a delicate tassel. We must not cast off the threads, but weave them into the design of an eternal fabric. Each day points to eternity. The fate of all time depends upon a single moment.
And we continue with the singing of Micha Mocha on page 240. Micha Mocha ba'elim Adonai, Micha Mocha netar b'kodesh, Norati lo tosef eleh, Norati lo tosef eleh. Shira chadasha shibechu geulim, Shem kol sfat hayom, Yochad kulam hodu, V'imlichu ve'amru, We continue with Tefillah on page 242, and for those who are able to do so, I invite you to rise. Page 242. Adonai sifatai tiftachu fi agi tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, ve'Elohei avotenu ve'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, ve'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, ve'Elohei Leah, Ha'el HaGadol HaGibor HaNorah, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, Ve'koneh Hakol, Ve'zocher Chasdei Avot V'imahot, U'mevii Gula Livnei Bneiam, Leman Shemo Be'ahava, Melech Ozer U'Moshia U'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham Ve'ezrat Sarah. Atah gibor le'olam Adonai, Mikayeh kol atarav le'ashia, Mashiv haruach morid Hashem, Mekalkel chayim bechesed, Mikayeh hakol berachamim rabim, Somek noflim v'rofeh cholim, Umatir asurim, Umekayem emunato lishenei afar, michamocha bal gevurot, umido melach, melech meimit umekayem, umasmiach Yeshua, b'ne'eman atal hachayot hakol, Baruch atah Adonai, Mekayeh hakol. Nikadesh et shimcha ba'olam, keshem shemakdishim oto b'shmimam, kakatuv al yad neviecha, v'karazel zevamar, kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzivaot, Melech kol haaretz kivodo, Adir Adirenu Adonai, Adonenu matir shimcha bechol haaretz, Baruch kivod Adonai mimkomo. Echad hu Eloheinu, hu Avinu Malkeinu, hu Moshienu ve'hu Yashmienu, v'rachamav le'nei kol chai. Ani Adonai Elohecha, yimloch Adonai le'olam, Elohai Zion, ledor vador, hallelujah. Ledor vador nagid kod lecha, ulenesat nizakim kedushatcha nakdish, v'shivkacha Eloheinu mibinu lo yamush leolam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai, Ha'el HaKadosh. Please be seated. We continue with the singing of Yismechu on page 250. Yismechu v'malekutecha shomrei 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 Shabbat b'korei aneg Shabbat. Yismechu v'malekutecha Shomrei, Shomrei, Shomrei Shabbat, Bekore Oneg Shabbat. Mekarishe Shvi Shabbat, Kulam Yisbehu, Vitangu Mitovecha Shabbat, Ismechu V'Malechutecha, Shomrei, Shomrei, Shomrei Shabbat, Bekore Oneg Shabbat, Behashvi Ratzita Bo, Ratzita Bevikidashto Shabbat, Chemdot Yamim, Oto Karata Shabbat, Yismechu V'Malechutecha, Shomrei, Shomrei, Shomrei Shabbat, Bekore Oneg Shabbat. We continue on page 257, page 257, reading together. For the expanding grandeur of creation, worlds known and unknown, galaxies beyond galaxies, filling us with awe and challenging our imaginations. Modim anachnu lach. For this fragile planet Earth, its times and tides, its sunsets and seasons, Modim anachnu lach. For the joys of human life, its wonders and surprises, its hopes and achievements, Modim anachnu lach. For human community, our common past and future hope, for oneness transcending all separation, our capacity to work for peace and justice in the midst of hostility and oppression, Modim anachnu lach. For high hopes and noble causes, for faith without fanaticism, for understanding of views not shared, Modim anachnu lach. For all who have labored and suffered for a fairer world, who have lived so that others might live in dignity and freedom, Modim anachnu lach. For human liberties and sacred rights, for opportunities to change and grow, to affirm and choose, Modim anachnu lach. We pray that we may live not by our fears, but by our hopes, not by our words, but by our deeds. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha ulchana elehodot. It feels like for a very long time, we've been saying more than ever now, we need to pray for peace. For a very long time, but maybe even more so now, to pray for peace and to take a moment before we sing our Sim Shalom, and close our eyes and have our own personal moment of prayer for peace. Sim Shalom Tova Uvracha. Sim Shalom Tova Uvracha. Sim Shalom Tova Sim Shalom Tova Uvracha Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael Amecha Shalom Tova Uvracha. And before we have our moment of silent meditation, I ask for our next reader to read the English in the middle of page 260, My God, Guard My Speech. I have it.
My God, guard my speech from evil and my lips from deception. Before those who slander me, I will hold my tongue. I will practice humility. Open my heart to your Torah that I may pursue your mitzvot. As for all who think evil of me, cancel their designs and frustrate their schemes. Act for your own sake, for the sake of your power, for the sake of your holiness, for the sake of your Torah, so that your loved ones may be rescued. Save with your power and answer me.
We pause for a moment of silent meditation or personal reflection. Ose shalom imroma, uyase shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru amen. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. So our interpretation of the Nurit Hirsch, Ose Shalom, that we sang just now, is one that I think a lot of Jews are coming to when we're praying for peace at this moment. And we always are lately just doing the sad part, the slow part, and we all go there with it. We all feel that when we sing it. But the reason why it lifts us up at the end, why it speeds up, in my view, is that we can wallow in our sadness, and it can lead us to a place of inaction, feeling so overwhelmed and so underwater and so sad, that we need to make sure that we're cleaving onto our prayers for peace so that we can go on and we can take action and it doesn't freeze us in our tracks. And we're going to talk more about that from Noah's point of view. See, he made it there. In Noah's point of view in just a moment. So we will continue with our Torah service. And we will begin on page 362, at the top of 362, Ein Kamocha. And Michael, would you like to help me open the ark? Thank you. And I'll need the congregation to make sure you're singing along with me, because the people at home won't be able to hear me. I don't have the ear mic, so maybe if we all join together in the Ein Kamocha, people will hear us. Ein Kamocha Elohim Adonai, v'kim ma'asecha. Please rise. Malchut lecha malchut kol olamim, u'memshatecha nekvodot ha'ador. Adonai melech, Adonai malach, Adonai ino le'olam va'ed. Adonai oz le'amo yitem, Adonai yivarech et amo b'shalom. Arachamim, hiva bersoncha et Zion. Tivne chomot Yerushalayim, Tivne chomot Yerushalayim, ki v'chol levad batoknu, melech eram v'nisa Adonai olamim. Ki mitzion teisei Torah, ki mitzion teisei Torah, u'devar Adonai Yerushalayim. Baruch shenatan Torah, Torah, Baruch shenatan Torah, Torah, le'amo Yisrael b'kedushato. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shemo, Gadlu le'Adonai iti, u'nirobemo Shemo yachdav, Lecha Adonai ha'geula, ha'geula, ha'tikar, ve'aletzach ve'ha'od, Kivro Hashamayim u'ha'aretz, Kivro Hashamayim u'ha'aretz, Lecha Adonai ha'mamlaka, David na'aseh le'kol eros. Please be seated. Thank you. So Shabbat Shalom from a new angle. We are at Parsha Noach, and we will be chanting, hopefully, from Genesis chapter 6, starting at verse 9. The portion can be found on page 57 in the Torah Commentary book, page 57. And I don't know if you noticed that this is a different Torah than we usually have. This is because the other one is prepped for our B'nai Mitzvah students in December to study. But this is always a very sentimental Torah to me, because this is the one I read on my bat mitzvah, and this is our 300-year-old Torah. So it's always a blessing to be able to have such an esteemed guest join us for a service. We join together in the blessing for Torah. Baruch et Adonai Hambarach, Baruch Adonai Hambarach leolam vaed, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato, Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. Eile toledot Noach, ish tzedek tamim haya, bidorotav et haElohim hithalech Noach. Vayoled Noach shilosha banim, et Shem, et Cham, et Yafet. Vatishachek haaretz livnei haElohim, vatimale haaretz chamas. Vayar Elohim et haaretz v'hinei nishchata, ki hishchit kol basar et darko al haaretz. Vayomer Elohim linoach, kates kol basar ba lefanai, ki maleha haaretz chamas mipnehem, v'hineni mishchitam et haaretz aseh lecha tevat atzei kofer, kinim ta'aseh et hateva, v'charfarta ota mibayit umichutz bakofer, v'zeh asher taseh otam shilosh me'ot ama, orech hateva chamishim ama rochba, ushiloshim ama komata. We join together in the blessing after the reading of Torah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torat emet, v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. And Michael, I invite you back to help me with Hagbah, and I thank you in advance. And I invite the congregation to rise. Vezot haTorah asher samosha livnei bnei Yisrael al pi Adonai b'yad Moshe al shlosha divarim, al shlosha divarim, al shlosha divarim, haolam omed. Al haTorah v'al avodah v'al gemelut chasadim, al haTorah v'al avodah v'al gemelut chasadim, al shlosha divarim, al shlosha divarim, al shlosha divarim, olam omed. Lo yisa goel goy keret, lo yilmedu od milchama. Lo yisa goel goy keret, lo yilmedu od milchama. Lo yisa goel goy keret, lo yilmedu od milchama. Lo yisa goel goy keret, lo yilmedu So the section we had just read translates to, these are the Chronicles of Noah. Noah was a righteous man, faultless in his generation. Noah walked with God. Noah fathered 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. The world was corrupt before God. The land was filled with crime. God saw the world, and it was corrupted. All flesh had perverted its way on earth. God said to Noah, "The end of all flesh has come to me. The world is filled with man's crime. I will therefore destroy the earth. Make yourself an ark of cypress wood. Divide the ark into compartments. Caulk the inside and outside with this pitch. This is how you shall construct it." More to come on that later. We pause now for our prayers of healing, Mishaberach, which can be found on page 371. We mention the names in our own community of Malcolm Fletcher, Marcia Krantz, Ellen Bertuglia, Alice Oppenheimer, Jeff Lesser, Goldie Schultz, Chava Sarah bat Avraham v'Chana Frara, Mindy Fisher, Kayla Chana bat Adan Leib v'Masa Leah, Barbara Savage, Marlene Gratchner, Sophia Gaia Siegel, Sarah Gardner, Cindy DeRicio, Harry Greenberg, Judy Fowler, Nick Bod, Deb Nielsen, Moshe Ben Elizabeth Ben Theodore, Rosalie Middleman, Jennifer Ness, George Goldstein, Harriet Eisner, Carla Teith, Linda Drachman, Chaim Ben David, Eileen Davidson, Craig Davidson, Hugh Morton, Art Bond, Roberta Levine, Jordan Steinberg, Lisa Galda, Ed Crosby, Myra Kaplan, Jeff Schaefer, Marion Gwertz, Louis Alahut, Carol Schaefer, Mary Budnitsky, Jocelyn Jackson, Jen Jones, Michael Infanti, Gary Garnick, Ann Marsden, Rick Ulrich, and Ileana Cohn. And if anyone who is joining us through the blessing of technology would like to add a name, we will read them later and add them to our prayers. And I invite the congregation to share any names you have for healing.
Walter Fett.
I also add the name of Murray Savar, who was our accompanist during the times of COVID. I also want to add the name of Murray Savar, who was our accompanist during the times of COVID, who is struggling with cancer now, so we all keep him in our prayers. And obviously everyone who is suffering physically, emotionally, and spiritually right now due to the unrest in Israel. We join together in the prayer Mishaberach on page 371. Mishaberach Avotenu Mekor Abracha Limotenu. May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mishaberach imotenu, mekor abracha avotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. continue with our Haftarah service today. The blessings can be found on page 372, page 372. And for those who want to have a book in each hand, our Haftarah portion can be found in the Plaut Torah commentary on page 326. Page 326. Yes. That should be it. Yes. We join together in the blessing before Haftarah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar b'nviim tovim v'ratza v'divreihem hanemarim be'emet. Baruch atah Adonai habocher b'Torah Uf Moshe Avdo, Uf Yisrael Amo, Uf Inviei HaEmet VaHaTzedek.
Sing, O barren woman who has never given birth. Break out in song, you who have never been in labor. The desolate woman shall have more children than a woman who is married, says the Eternal One. Enlarge the space for your tent. Do not spare the canvas for your dwelling place. Do not hold back. Lengthen your ropes. Drive in your pegs. For you shall spread out to the right and the left. Your offspring shall dispose nations. Cities now deserted shall again be settled. Have no fear, you shall not be put to shame. Do not cringe, your disgrace is at an end. You shall forget the shame of your youth. No more shall you remember your disgrace as a widow. For your husband is your maker, the one called God of the hosts of heaven. And your Redeemer is the Holy One of Israel, called God of all earth. The Eternal calls you wife again, once abandoned and brokenhearted, once rejected, says your God, but a young wife still. For a brief moment I forsook you. With abiding love I take you back. In a moment of flooding anger I hid my face from you. But now with love unending I take you in, says your Redeemer, the Eternal One. This is like the days of Noah to me. I promised then never again to cover the earth with the waters of Noah's days. So now I promise never again to be angry with you or rebuke you. Though the mountains may depart and the hills be removed, my love shall never depart from you, and my covenant of peace shall not be removed, says the one who loves you, the Eternal. Ah, unhappy, storm-tossed soul, with none to comfort you. I will make garnets your building stones, and sapphires your foundations. I will build your towers with rubies, your gates with precious stones, your border with gems. All your children shall be taught by the Eternal, and great shall be the happiness of your children. You shall be established in righteousness, safe from oppression and unafraid, safe from terror. It shall not come near you. Should any attack you, it will not be my doing. Whoever attacks you will fall on your account. It is I who created the smith who fans the coals in the fires and forges weapons by his work. I also created the destroyer to wreak havoc. No weapon fashioned against you can succeed. You shall defeat all those who rise to accuse you. That is the heritage of the eternal servants, and I am the source of their vindication, says the Eternal. Come all who are thirsty, come for water, even if you have no money. Come buy food and eat, come buy food without money, wine and milk without cost. Why spend money for what is not bread? Why spend your wages for what does not satisfy? Listen well to me, and you shall eat what is good, and your soul shall delight in abundance. Open your ears and come to me. Hearken, and you shall live. I will make an everlasting covenant with you, like the true love I extended to David. As once I made him a witness to the world, a prince and commander of nations, so now you shall summon people you do not know, and people that do not know you shall come running to you, because of the eternal your God, the Holy One of Israel, who has given you glory.
Thank you. We join together in the blessing after Haftarah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, tzor kol haolamim, tzadik bechol hadorot, ha'el ha'ne'eman homer v'oseh, המדבר ומקיים, שכל דבריו אמת וצדק, על התורה ועל העבודה ועל ענבים ועל יום השבת הזה, שנתת לנו אדוני אלוהינו, לקדושה ולמנוחה, לכבוד ולתפארת. על הכל, אדוני אלוהינו, אנחנו מודים לך ומברכים אותך, יתברך שמך בפי כל חי תמיד לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני, מקדש השבת. Amen. So very briefly, before I get into our Torah discussion, just to comment to those of you who might be here or there, for those of us who are modern women who may have chosen not to have children, and we hear the beginning of that Haftarah portion and your head may want to burst, I urge you to think context and time. And what it's saying in the beginning is no matter what your folly, no matter what your misdeed in your youth, you can change and you can bring about change. And I think that's one thing we can take away from the beginning of that section, said in a way that they could hear then, and maybe this is a way that we can hear now, to reinterpret those words in a way that maybe doesn't bring up a knee-jerk reaction to those who might be more feminist. But it really is a good message, especially now that the actions of the past don't necessarily lock us into a particular future. So I am going to share some words that are mainly taken from Rabbi Richard Sachs. If you haven't found him, he's an amazing rabbi, I believe in the UK. So I encourage you to hear some of his words, and I'm going to share some with you now that have been somewhat shortened. Noah is one of the most tantalizing figures in the Torah. It's nowhere is this more evident than in the first and last glimpse that we catch him in the parsha that bears his name. The opening is full of expectation. Noah was a righteous man, faultless in his generation. Noah walked with God. No one else in the Torah receives such accolades. Not Abraham, Isaac, or Jacob, not Joseph or Moses or Joshua. Yet the last scene of his life is full of pathos. In Genesis 9:20, Noah began to be a man of the soil, Ish ha'adamah. He went from Ish ha'tzedek to Ish ha'adamah. And he planted a vineyard. When he drank some of his wine, he became drunk. The behavior of his sons cannot hide us from the embarrassment they felt at knowing their father, the sole human being worthy of rescue during the flood, had become a drunkard. How had a man so great fallen so low? That's the question to which the sages of the Midrash sought an answer. And there are many comments, but one is surpassing in its sharpness. Once the waters had abated, Noah should have left the ark. However, Noah said to himself, I entered with God's permission, as it says. Shall I now leave without permission? And God said to him, is it permission that you're seeking then? Very well, here's permission. Come out of the ark. Rabbi Yehuda ben Eliah said, "If I had been there, I would have broken down the ark and taken myself out." Once the rain stops, we expect to read that Noah emerges. Instead, the narrative slows down, and for 14 verses, almost nothing happens. The water recedes. The ark comes to a rest. Noah opens a window, sends out a raven, then he sends out a dove. He waits for 7 days, he sends it out again. It returns with an olive leaf, another 7 days. He sends a dove a third time. This time it doesn't return, but Noah still doesn't step out onto dry land. Eventually, God himself says, "Come out of the ark." Only then does Noah do so. The Midrash is quite unmistakable in its note of exasperation. When it comes to rebuilding a shattered world, we do not wait for permission. Noah is the paradigm of biblical obedience. He does as he's commanded. What his story tells us is that obedience is not enough. Despite the fact that the Torah contains 613 commandments, there is no word for obey. Instead, the verb the Torah uses is shema, lishmoa, to listen, hear, attend, understand, internalize, and respond. In Judaism, God does not command blind obedience. If he sought no more than mindless submission to the divine will, he would have created robots and machines or genetically programmed people who would have responded automatically to commands as a dog does to Pavlov's bell. God wants us to be mature and deliberate, to do God's will because we understand or because we trust God when we do not understand. God seeks from us something other than great obedience, namely responsibility. What might Abraham have said when confronted with the possibility of a flood? What if there are 50 righteous people? What if there are 10? Far be it for you to do such a thing, to kill the righteous with the wicked, treating the righteous and wicked alike. Abraham might have saved the world. Noah saved only himself and his family. Abraham might have failed, but Noah at least could have tried. And on the evidence we have, he didn't even try. Though to be sure, there are midrashic traditions that say he did try, but most think that he did not. Noah's end, drunk, disheveled, an embarrassment to his children, eloquently tells us that if you save yourself while doing nothing to save the world, you do not even save yourself. Noah could not have lived with the guilt of survival. It takes courage to rebuild a shattered world. That was the courage shown by those who built and fought for the state of Israel in the years after the Holocaust. It was the same kind of courage that led a handful of survivors from Eastern Europe to reconstruct their devastated worlds in Israel, the United States, and elsewhere. There were different kinds of people, but they shared that intuitive knowledge that Noah lacked. When it comes to rebuilding the ruins of catastrophe, you do not wait for permission. You take the risk and walk ahead. Faith is more than obedience. It is the courage to create. Create. Sorry, thank you. Luckily, we have lots of courage in this room. So I ask if any one of you has a thought on anything I said or anything else in the portion, and I ask that you take the mic, so I'll come in the middle.
All right, I have a lot of comments. So, in the Torah portion, lawlessness is the word Hamas, which means violence, and it says that to destroy all lawlessness. I don't know, I just think that's a good little coincidence. Absolutely. And then in the Haftorah, does dispossess mean like move, like dispossess? Yeah. Okay. It says dispossess the foreigners who had occupied regions from which Israelites had been exiled. I don't know how to feel about that. However, that is also another coincidence that I saw. And then also just, there was something else. Maybe it was in the portion. Yeah, just like the destroy Hamas. I thought that was.
It is. And one of the things that you said actually was something that I'm trying very hard to take with me now, which is you're not sure how you feel about it. Because the truth is there's so much happening, and if you're like most of us that get a little glued to the TV for a while, you may see a period where they show you all the horrors that are happening to the Israelis. And then they're going to show you the horrors that are happening to the people living in Gaza. And you get torn, and you struggle. And you don't sometimes know how to feel. And that's good, because it means you're thinking. And you're not just going to forget that you're going to struggle with it. We're people who are meant to struggle. We're meant to have these questions and ask these questions of ourselves and each other. And so I think it's a good thing that you had that moment.
And also what you said about Abraham and why put the innocent and the wicked together. I feel like we have to think about that a lot now, because Hamas is different than Palestinians. And in this, it says destroy Hamas. So only the violent, not the non-violent. So.
Thank you, Michael.
I think the word courage is appropriate, but I also think right now for the people of Israel to create, because they're going to have to build again, it's going to take more than courage. I think it's going to take rage. I think it's going to take determination. I don't know if there's synonyms in any way for courage. I think it's going to be stronger feelings keeping them. I think after the Holocaust it took courage, because I think that there was so much beaten down that they didn't know if they could rise again. But they know what they have to do in Israel. And I don't know if I'm thinking of the word courage, and you didn't equate it to Israel now, but I'm thinking there's no question that they're going to rebuild whatever they have to after they mourn and bury their dead. There's no question that they're going to do what they have to do. And I don't know. When you say courage is to create, in this instance, I don't think it's courage. I have to go to the thesaurus now and see seriously whether that, what that would look like. Thank you.
Mike.
In thinking about Noah and applying it to today, we talk about God giving us self-determination, make up our own minds. But making up your own mind can also be accomplished with blinders on. And I think we have blinders on all sides. We have, as Noah, who only listened to God. He had the blinders on only for his faith, that God would tell him what to do and that he would do it, versus his sons, who used self-determination to continue to build. And I think that's what we're seeing on both sides, whether it be the Palestinians and the Jews, the Ukrainians and the Russians, or any place else, even in this country. We have so many people with, I guess you could call it blind faith, or as I said, with blinders on, versus open minds. And we've had that all through creation. There was a prayer that I saw in the book, and it said, don't, in essence, don't pray for things that have never happened, such as world peace. And pray for integrity, for hope, for things that can be accomplished. I don't think we'll ever have world peace because of the two radical sides, if you will. And it's a sad state, but it's a human state. We are products of what we see and what we grow up with.
Thank you. If you were to ask an Israeli what they think of this war, of the loss, of the devastation, many of them will say there are no words. There are no words. That after Angela Buchdahl, Rabbi Angela Buchdahl had said that this had happened on Simchat Torah, where everything ends and begins, and we go from a place at the end with all the words back all the way to a place where there was nothing, where everything was formless. And a lot of Jews in Israel, obviously it's Shabbos, it's Simchat Torah, they weren't seeing what was happening. So they went from a place of everything, of Devarim, of words, all the way to Bereshit at the beginning, where there were no words. And it was perfectly symbolic for where they are. They have no words. Everything, life is formless. And I thought that was a really awakening thought.
I just thought of something else. So I know how you said about Noah that that he shouldn't have to ask for permission from God, and I find that really relevant right now. I mean, obviously Israel has to ask permission from the other countries and make sure it's doing its due diligence, but whatever Israel does, it's not going to get the world's agreement. And everyone who agrees with Israel, whatever reason it may be, you're going to have people saying, oh, this, that, the other. So right now, I'm just supporting Israel, and, I'm Jewish. It doesn't have to be any reason other than that. And people are like, oh, but this and that. I'm like, it's like, I'm not saying I'm supporting everything the government does. I'm not the Israeli government. But I feel like that, I don't have to ask permission from anyone else to support that. And then also, I saw at the end of the Haftorah, it says that that the no harm can be done without my consent. Whoever would harm you shall fall because of you. No weapon formed against you shall succeed. Every tongue that contends you without law you shall defeat. So, no.
Thank you. It's hard in this world where everybody tries to walk the middle line. And we all try to not make people feel uncomfortable and not feel other. To find the strength to be able to stand up and say, this was a terrorist act. That it was the worst mass slaughter of Jews since the Holocaust. And wherever you stand on the Palestinian Jewish Israeli issue, this was an act of terrorism. Plain and simple. Wherever you stand on how Israel responded, this was an act of terrorism. This was an act of mass slaughter. And you can take the conversation from there if you can agree on that one fact. The rest of it can be discussed, but I feel like that fact needs to be agreed upon. Last time, and then we got it.
I just gotta say about that, I feel like many people are condemning Israel's response to terrorism, but not condemning the terrorism itself, which that's also why, like, you know, you don't need any permission to support Israel, because all these other people aren't supporting Israel, and they're only supporting the terrorist side, or kind of looking at it from one way perspective.
I'll try and say something in summary, because I don't think the discussion of the present situation in Israel belongs here today. We are talking about the ethics of the Torah and God making an ethical decision about the value of the world and the value of human beings and their behavior. And he decides he's not going to cure them, he's going to wipe them out. And that's not what's... Israel is a different story, and terrorists and what they believe, we could sit here for a week and we would never get close. And but with this story of God making a decision, he makes decisions to wipe people out. We have to realize that our own Torah tells us he didn't like the way the two sons of Aaron, you know, officiated at a ceremony. They overstepped their bounds. Boom, they're gone. He decided the world is unethical and there's one ethical man. Boom, they're gone. And God makes some very profound decisions. I don't begin to discuss that. I believe it. I'm a Jew. I believe what's written in the Chumash, so I accept all of that. If he made a decision, I'll say it's all for the good. And one last word that I have an old adage, you've heard me say it so many times. God always picks the right man for the decision, for the occasion. He needed somebody to strike out and set up a Jewish community. That was Abraham. He was full of energy. He was full of response. God needed somebody to just save humankind. He was saving a little string of animals and one family in this flood of the whole world. That's all he was saving. He didn't need a genius to put all that in an ark and save it, because he told them there was a flood coming. And he picked the right man, the right situation. And no, I don't think Noah was a heroic figure. I think he was the one that was needed. He accepted the will of God. The will of God was there. That's a personal...
I think it's a wonderful thing to remember that each human, each person, has their strengths and weaknesses, their gifts, and the things that they can add to this world. And if we keep one ear open to God, we might just be directed on where we should take those gifts and how they should be used. So I think that's a wonderful thought, that God chooses the right person for the job. We need to keep an ear open maybe and see where God leads us.
I believe it's an old saying, I'd give my fortune for a reasonable man. Unfortunately, we don't have many of those. And I'm not talking about the man with the fortune, I'm talking about the reasonableness. And it's the unreasonable that has formed conflicts all throughout history. You can even say that Noah was an unreasonable man because all he did was follow God's word. He didn't go anywhere past that. He was locked in like so many ultra-conservatives are. They have blinders on. They don't see anything else. We just don't have enough reasonable people on each side of the discussions to save ourselves.
Thank you. So before we return the Torah to the Ark, because I think this is probably one of the more heated discussions we've ever had, I want us all to just take a breath, recenter ourselves. We will return the Torah to the Ark on page 374. And I thank Michael again for your help. Please rise. We continue with the Aleinu found on page 586, page 586. Aleinu l'shaber Adonai, l'afeitu l'aliyoseh breshit, shelo asanu k'lalei aratzot, v'lo samanu k'nishbekot ha'adamah, shelo sam k'alkeinu ka'em, v'lo Please be seated. As we prepare for Kaddish, we turn together to page 595, page 595. It is hard to sing of oneness when the world is not complete, when those once who brought wholeness to our life have gone, and naught but memory can fill the emptiness their passing leaves behind. But memory can tell us only what we were in the company of those we loved. It cannot help us find what each of us has lost, alone, must now become. Yet no one is really alone. Those who live no more echo still within our thoughts and words, and what they did is part of what we have become. We do best homage to our dead when we live our lives more fully, even in the shadow of our loss. For each of our lives is worth the life of the whole world. In each one is the breath of the ultimate one. In affirming the one, We affirm the worth of each one, whose life now ended brought us closer to the source of life, in whose unity no one is alone and every life finds purpose. We mark the recent passing of Janet Silverstein, wife of late Samuel Silverstein, Herbert Rosenbluth, husband of Rosalind Rosenbluth, Marian Barretts, grandmother of Dan Barretts and great-grandmother of Ethan and Noah, Barton Perota, friend of Joan and Bruce Tresky, Brian Zabel, friend of Amy L. Memis Fuller, Rabbi. We also mark the art sites of Susanna Boudet, Francis Frank, Benjamin Frank, Sidney Goldstein, Marilyn Greenberg, Albert Hanowitz, Bernard Helfat, Donna Faye Kirsch, Joseph Longer, Marilyn Richter, Leon Richter, Sadie